If the topic is really just reporting news, AI will be fantastic. There's other considerations other than easy to do. The fact that it's easy to do doesn't mean it's more valuable or solves the problem that you're trying to solve.
How did you leverage your previous experience from podcasting into this new one? And why do you feel the other one would bring once in a blue moon person to reach out to you, and this one is bringing daily people to reach out to you?
Most people couldn't spell ChatGPT back then, not to mention use it. And
Isar Meitis is an AI implementation expert, four-time CEO, keynote speaker, and former F-16 pilot turned serial entrepreneur. He helps business leaders harness AI to drive real growth. As host of the Leveraging AI podcast, he empowers organizations with practical strategies, tailored education, and hands-on implementation to maximize AI's business impact.
there's a lot of AI helping me with the research and with aggregating the information and with selecting the better topics and with organizing them in a logical order.
Do you think people can listen to just AI talking to another AI? Or is that not something at the end of the day people are for when it comes to a podcast?
People see me as an AI expert. I use the show in two main ways to get people to want to work with me. One is...
Isar, can you tell me about Leveraging AI podcast?
The Leveraging AI podcast actually started, I had two podcasts before that. And when I started my AI consulting business early in 2023, it was very obvious that I need to add a podcast to that because that's how I was running my previous business as well, with a podcast to back it up. In the beginning, I actually ran both at the same time. So I was running the Business Growth Accelerator and Leveraging AI in parallel for about 2 months, I think, something like that. So from like April to June of 23. But the podcast was really built to support the AI consulting and education business that I'm running. And it's been working very, very well. There's now tens of thousands of people who listen every single month. And it's growing every single month. And we're getting great reviews and good responses. And people on LinkedIn reach out to me almost every single day saying, oh, I know, we love the podcast. We learned so much. Please keep on doing what you're doing and stuff like that, which never happened to me before, which is actually really fun, right? So I was podcasting for, I guess, 3 or 4 years before starting this podcast. And, once in a blue moon, somebody reach out to me. Now it's literally almost daily. And so I always enjoyed podcasting, but this is a very different experience. I guess it's the right topics at the right time, right audience, right message, right focus. So all these kind of things. But yeah, it's a podcast that is focused on teaching people everything they need to know about AI. We do 2 episodes every single week. One episode is highly tactical. So I find the best practitioners on the planet that can explain to people how to actually leverage AI in business. And we really look at the how. So there's a gazillion podcasts that tell you what's possible with AI or what's happening in the AI world. Very few that actually show you, open this tool, enter this prompt, copy this output here, you get this business outcome. And that's what we do. We dive into the actual how, like the step-by-step process of everything. So that's every Tuesday. And every Saturday, I do a news episode where I cover what happened in the past week in AI, which is a lot. And so that's, on a nutshell, that's what the podcast is.
There is a gazillion thing to follow up on here, Isar. So thanks a lot, making me working harder. But hey, I love it. So first things first. Why was the first thing that you mentioned getting business from the podcast? Like I started the business, I wanted to launch a podcast with it. That's what I was doing before. What's the link between the two?
Okay, great question. So, little history. The first podcast I started was completely random. I sold a business, I was bored, and I was looking for something to do. And I missed having business conversations. I was running $130 million travel company. And I went from that to not running anything. And so I miss business conversations and I listened to a lot of business podcasts. And oh, these people get to talk to interesting business people. So if I start a business podcast, I can talk to interesting business people. That was the whole purpose. Like I had no other agenda doing that. And about episode 6 or 7, something like that, maybe 10, early on, all the people I interviewed until that point were friends of mine or acquaintance, like people I knew. They were CEOs of companies and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like I got to go beyond the immediate people that I know. This is really dumb. Like, first of all, I will run out of them eventually. I have a lot of friends, but how many? Like, okay, 20, 30, 40 CEOs that I know to bring them over. And second, I gotta go beyond that and to be a real podcast. And so at kind of like the same time, I was listening to a podcast that somebody else was on. His name was Isaac Lidsky. Crazy, incredible life story, like really, really amazing life story. I'm like, oh, he'll be an amazing guest. Now, I knew nothing about him other than he has a crazy life story. And I looked him up on LinkedIn, found him, sent him a message, and got a message back. Hey, I'm, Isaac's assistant. He'll gladly be on your podcast. Here's a link to kind of like about him if you need more information and how do we book this and so on. We book the podcast and then I go and see who the guy is. The guy is a big deal. Stupidly successful business person, speaks on, the Tonight shows of the world, gets invited $30,000, $50,000 to speak at conferences around the world, 5-star hotels, business class flights. I was nobody. I had a podcast that had 6 episodes and my siblings were listening. And the guy said yes. And I was blown away because 2 months before that, I was running a $120 million company and there was a lot of people I was not important enough for them to meet with me. And now I'm nobody. And this guy who's a big deal, who really goes to the biggest stages in the world, comes to my podcast without asking any questions.
Why is that, you think?
That started me thinking, like, okay, what the hell? Like, how is that possible? And that started me thinking and researching and so on. And it became very obvious to me that people want to talk. People want to share their point of view. People want to be on stages. Not all people, but people who go on podcasts are. Business people for sure, business leaders for sure, thought leaders for sure. They're looking for a stage. If you give them the stage, they will come. And so I started a company that was called Be the Stage. The idea behind it was to allow other people to benefit from this concept of leveraging podcasting and live talk shows as a platform to build an audience, connect with relevant clients, build relationships, and so on. And so the second podcast was all about that, was about getting clients to my second business. So when I started Multiplai, which is the company that I'm running right now, I'm like, okay, I already have the blueprint. I know that this will lead to business. I did not know how much it's going to work because it was a new topic,
Never
new
know.
concept, but the blueprint was very obvious. So that was a very long answer to a short question.
I love it. And so to double down on that, people want to talk. People want to be seen as thought leaders. And the whole, because here we are really getting tactical about how to leverage podcasts for your business, which I love. It's an ego stroke. This is a marketing term to say you invite somebody on your podcast, as long as it's relevant, obviously, right? If you're talking about pizza dough recipes and you're inviting an AI expert on your show, might not be as
Not the
interested.
best idea. Not the best idea.
Exactly. But if you say, I have a podcast that exclusively talks about AI, we are only interviewing people who are actually walking the talk, actual experts. I've had so-and-so on the show and so-and-so on the show, and I would love to get your take on this. People are like, oh, cool. If on top of that, you have an audience to put them in front of, this is the value for them. Not only are they going to tap into an audience, so be seen as a thought leader, they're going to get content out of this, and it's a win-win scenario, which is invaluable. It's also, from my opinion, unscalable. It's your time, right? It's a 1-hour conversation you're going to have with somebody. It's not like this is another short form content or another mass email outreach or another whatever it ends up being. It is time that you invest in the person and people see that. And in a day and age where AI is everywhere, we're going to get back to this, and content has never been easier to put out in mass, podcast keeps that intimate conversation, that one-to-one connection that people want to be part of. Okay, how did you leverage your previous experience for podcasting into this new one, Isar? And why do you feel the other one would bring once in a blue moon person to reach out to you, and this one is bringing daily people to reach out to you?
Great questions. So I'll start really with how I started.
Yeah.
When I started, again, it was very early on in the AI, like the generative AI game, right? So the podcast went live, I think April of 23. Most people couldn't spell ChatGPT back then, not to mention use it. And there were already a few AI podcasts, but not many. And they were all either very technical, like machine learning, data science kind of stuff, or uh, people who were interviewing enterprise level clients. That was kind of the norm. So, okay, I need to be something different. I need to do something that I'll enjoy doing, because otherwise, there's a very, very, very long list of podcasts who have 6 to 10 episodes and then they stopped because they couldn't find the passion to keep on doing it. Uh, and so I'm a tinker. I'm a geek. I love playing with stuff. And I wanted to learn. It was very early in the game for me as well. And this was a great way for me to share my passion of being a geek and tinkering together with a free way to learn from the best people on the planet on things they were doing that I did not know how to do, while sharing it with an audience that is looking for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was very different. There was zero other podcasts like that were there back then. By the way, there's very few right now. There's maybe 2 or 3 other podcasts that I know of that are very tactical, that go to the air like, show me how to do this. And even those, in many cases, are half storytelling, half tactics. My episodes, there's no take 7 minutes to tell me how you got here. It's like, okay, this is the use case, let's go. And so you get immediately into the meat and potatoes of how to do something with AI, and people are looking for that. So it was very early on to me. Now, again, the reason I got to that was not just the concept, it was following the blueprint of what I did for clients before that. So the idea was, what will people find value in? What are people looking for? What is not out there in the market? What's the right format to put it in? How to package it? What needs to be like? All these things were very well thought after in order to put this together, which leads to why I'm getting so many people reach out to me. I'm providing a very real need for people. Now, the crazy thing, and you touched on it a little bit, but that's, I think, one of the secrets that people don't understand. Most of the content that I deliver, so I put aside the weekend episodes that are news that are just me, but the Tuesday episodes, most of them, I would say 85% of them, I'm not providing the content. I'm just asking smart questions, just like you are. Somebody else does, and yet I'm the expert, right? So I get invited to speak on really large stages. I get invited to provide workshops and training to companies all around the world that are paying me nicely to do that because I'm the AI expert, despite the fact many or much of the content is I'm not providing it, somebody else is sharing the knowledge. But the fact that I know which questions to ask, the fact that I can correlate to what they're saying, the fact that I can add my 2 cents as needed, the fact that I can drive the conversation in the right direction to provide value is valuable to the audience. And hence, that reflects on me as the expert in AI. And so when people are like, oh, I can't interview people, I need to be the center of things. Like, no, you don't. You can be the center of things without actually doing most of the work and without doing most of the heavy lifting. You still need to be knowledgeable. You still need to know what you're talking about. You still need to be able to add value. One of my superpowers that helps me, maybe my biggest superpower, that really helps me a lot being a good podcaster and in what I do in general, is that I'm very good at taking complex things and making them simple to people to understand. And so even if you bring an expert that is like up here in their knowledge, but they're not very good in communicating it, and I can help them bring this down to the masses, like you said before, everybody wins. The masses win because now they understand this thing. This person wins because they get to be the expert and be on stage. And I win because I get to benefit from all of it. I get a great relationship with somebody who can help me later on, that I can partner on different things. I get a big audience that I can provide value to, and it drives my business. And so, again, win, win, win.
The problem with your answers, Isar, is that there is even more gold to dig into. So I'm going to try to keep it structured, but I absolutely love this. Why did you make the choice of going ultra specialized into the content that you're publishing out there? To put a little bit of context into that question, it's not the number one issue that content creators face, but I'd say it's a big issue that people face when they start getting into content. They want to cater to as many people as possible, right? Like they want to go as wide as possible because they are like, the audience will be bigger. And it is counterintuitive, but actually this is not what you must do, especially when you start. You need to go super niche, super narrow. Not only are you doing that, you're getting into a format that we're going to get back to, which is how, right? It's not just talking about an AI concept, it's actually how to implement something. Why did you make that choice?
Awesome question. So there are several different reasons. Reason number one is exactly what you said, right? You want to be very specific with what you do. And the reason you want to be very specific because you have two options. You can either go wide or go deep. You cannot do both at the same time. By the way, that's true for many different things in life, not just a podcast. You can either be, the jack of all trades or the expert of one or a few things. And both are fine, by the way. There's nothing wrong with one option or the other. But the benefit as a podcaster, by the way, content creator of any kind, thought leader of any kind, is if you are very narrow, then people very clearly know what value you provide. Moreover, if that's the value they seek, you provide them a lot more value because you're going deep, because you're very specific. Now, I can tell you that now, okay, again, tens of thousands of people listening, blah, 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 blah. When I go and drift aside a little bit, like I do an episode where I talk about the future of AI, I get a slap on the wrist every single time. Like I would get a nice comment, a bunch of comments on LinkedIn saying, hey, nice episode, but this is not what we're coming to your episode for. Like, this is not, like, we can get that somewhere else. And by the way, my second episode, my Saturday episode, and if you want, we can dive to why I added a second episode. I did not start with two. Part of it was to give me a stage to talk about the bigger questions of AI and what do I feel this is doing and where are we going and so on, because I didn't want to muddy the water of here's how you do this thing with AI. Here's how you create clients. Here's how you drive this. Here's how you create content. Here's how you answer to emails. Here's how you do lead nurturing. Here's how you do data analysis, like whatever the case may be. These were very, very clear to do that because this creates, in my eyes, the most amount of value to people. Because the biggest problem people have with AI is they hear a lot about it. No, again, 2 years ago, it wasn't everywhere in the news, but now it's everywhere in the news. The biggest problem people have is like, I don't know how. Like, I understand it's a big deal. I understand I got to do this. The FOMO is driving me freaking crazy, but how do I actually do this? And that's what I want to solve. And yes, there's a lot of other things to solve, right? There's a lot of huge problems with AI implementation, but I chose one that is very, very specific. And people know that and they stick around because a lot of people are looking for. So I was looking for a very small problem that a lot of people have, or that I thought a lot of people will have, right? Because it was early on and I nailed it. It's working and a lot of people are finding value in it.
Golden nuggets after golden nuggets. So tell me a bit more. I want to get back to the news episodes and what you get out of this versus the guest episodes. What I'm very interested into here is how do you tackle how on a podcast? Click here, do that, copy that link, paste it there. At the end of the day, this is very visual. This is a YouTube tutorial video. You would go there, it's a 6 hours video on how to do something very specific, and you click, it's an SOP basically. How do you do that successfully? I guess is a keyword here, with an audio first platform.
Awesome question. It's not easy. It takes experience, but I've done similar things for 3 to 4 years before that. Now, it wasn't as specific, but it's not the first podcast that I had. I was running weekly podcasts, and in many cases more than that because I was doing some of them for clients. So I probably recorded, I'm guessing now, 350 to 400 episodes before I started leveraging AI. So it's not a crazy number, but it's not a small number either. I was very good and comfortable in doing live shows because a lot of the shows we did in my previous companies were live. And I became very good at explaining what's on the screen. And I brief my clients, my guests. I say, hey, remember, a lot of people are going to be driving their car, walking their dog, doing the dishes, doing the yard, whatever it is that they're doing, and they can't see. So we got to remember to explain. A lot of them don't remember, and that's fine. I'm like, okay, stop. Let me tell you for a second what's on the screen. We see this, we see that. On the left side, there's this. You do this, you copy that. And so I became very good, going back to my superpowers, in contextualizing the visual aspects that's on the screen to people. Now, I wish I was better in knowing how to promote my YouTube channel. I don't. So the YouTube channel still gets a few hundreds of views on every video. Probably should have gotten 10x what the podcast is getting. That is getting 10x what it's. So it's the other way around because it is a very visual medium. But I became very good at understanding when do I need to stop my guest and explain what's on the screen. And if it's a solo episode that I'm doing myself, like the one I recorded this morning, then obviously I explain everything because I'm already used to it. But it's just once you go through that process that you understand that you got to explain what's on the screen, then people get it. The only problem that I still have, and that's not solvable, is that some of these episodes are about creating visual content. How do you create videos with AI? How to create images with AI? How to create interior designs with AI? All these kind of things. And these are awesome episodes, but these are harder because I got to stop and say, okay, let me try to describe what we're seeing on the screen right now. And I can, and I try, but it's not the same thing as, and in these cases, I tell people, I understand that you're probably driving right now. When you get back home, there's a link in the show notes to go to the same YouTube episode. If you're interested in seeing what we're seeing, go click and see that afterwards. Finish listening to the episode. It's still going to be valuable. But if you want to jump to those right minutes where we show the outputs, you can do that afterwards in the YouTube channel as well. So it's not perfect, but it's working.
So just to follow up on one of the things that you mentioned, Isar, to anybody else also being interested into that, YouTube is 1 billion monthly podcast users. This is from February 2025, by the way. So at the moment we're recording this episode, mid-September 2025, this is 7 months ago, if my mental math is not broken. So you absolutely need to be on YouTube. And there is indeed a huge potential for a lot of audience there. I love how you've broken that down. If we look at the other format of your podcast, the news, right? The news sharing, how did you come up with that second concept? Why not just starting another podcast that would be more news focused? Why did you choose to do it on the same channel? What's in it for you? What's in it for the audience? Like, why?
So it started with two needs that I needed. And now the audience just get to benefit from it, which is the best scenario, right? But it's need number one was I needed to share what I want to share. And if most of my episodes are guest based, so I host somebody, yes, I get to comment, I get to highlight, I get to summarize, I get to add, but the core is not me. The second was, and to expand on that, some of the stuff I wanted to talk about was higher level stuff. It wasn't how to. It's the future of business with AI. How is that going to impact the workforce? How is it going to impact society and so on? And that didn't fit the other format that I didn't want to touch. I thought it was very helpful. And from the feedback, I knew it was. The second thing is the specific aspect of news. I was finding it hard to keep up with what's happening in the AI world. It's insane. So many things are happening every single week. And I'm busy. In addition to running the podcast, I'm running 2.5 other companies, one in a partnership with somebody and 2 businesses that I'm running. I don't have time to keep up. And I said, okay, I have to keep up because I need to know what's going on. I cannot have a conversation with a client and they're like, oh, did you saw what Google do this week? And I don't know. Like that just looks bad. And doing a podcast news episode forces me to know. I have to follow every single thing that's happening. I have to decide whether it's important or not. I have to decide if I want to report on it. And if I want to report on it, how can I provide value beyond just, hey, here's the news? Because then I'm not providing any value other than just aggregating information, which has its value. But I want to add value beyond that. And so adding that second episode solved both these problems. It forces me to follow the news down to the T, right? I know everything that's happening. I need to synthesize it in my little brain to figure out how to make it interesting, important, relevant, connect the dots for people. And because we're talking about the topics of the day, I can share what I think and how I analyze what's currently happening in AI. The only disadvantage for those of you who are considering doing something like this, it is about 10x the amount of work of doing a guest episode, literally 10x. And so it takes me a hell of a lot of time to do this. But again, it's providing value to me. It's providing value to the audience. It's providing value to my business. So I keep on doing this.
It's basically, it's not just a podcast investment in terms of time. It's also something you would in a world where you want to be the best advice to your clients, it's also something you would do for your business. But you've managed a way to actually create value for the audience and therefore for your business whilst doing this. Stupid question, but can't you have somebody doing that research for you and you just go through a script?
No. And I tried. So there's a lot of AI helping me with the research and with aggregating the information and with selecting the better topics and with organizing them in a logical order. Because if you think about it, I consume content every day. I drop it, a little secret, into a Slack channel. It's a random order. One could be about investment. The second one could be about a new feature from Anthropic. The third one could be a partnership between NVIDIA and Intel. And the fourth one could be a new model that was released in China. That's not a very good way to report the news. You need some kind of a logical flow, a story that people can follow. And so AI helps me organize it. AI helps me select. AI helps me in a lot of summarize some of the things. Like there's a lot of work that I don't do. And yet I gotta read the actual articles and in some cases the summaries of the articles. I gotta synthesize them and I gotta find what I want to say about them. Otherwise, I can have AI just read the news. Like then it's not me. So in order for me to think, how does that impact a business? How does that impact the future of society? How does that impact me? I got to think about it. For that, I need to be a part of the generation process and not just read the output. Getting to a point that I can read the output is actually really easy. But then I'll just create an avatar of myself and have it read the news. And then I don't need to be involved at all. I think that provides a lot less value to me, a lot less value to the business, a lot less value to my clients, and a lot less value to the listeners. And so I'll keep on investing for now the 6 to 8 hours a week that it takes me to produce that episode, which is a huge investment. It's like a day out of the week that I invest just in that.
Another stupid question. But since you're in AI, isn't there a way to just do all that research and then get an AI to record the episode? Have you looked a bit into this? Like,
So I can, like I said, I can do that, but then I don't get to synthesize the information. Don't get to figure out how does this new tool impact my clients, because I don't know the tool exists because the AI did the research and the AI created the episode and the AI recorded it. Like I said, that's easy to do. Between now and the time this episode goes live, I can have this system running with a virtual avatar of me actually doing that. But it's not going to provide the value that I want to provide, not to me, not to my clients, not to the audience. But yeah, it's doable. There's a new company. I don't know if you've seen that. 2 weeks ago, they made a big announcement. They're a tech company. They're going to be launching, they already started, 5,000 new podcasts that are all niche and AI based. 100% of it, beginning to end. So it's going to pick the episodes, it's going to pick the topic, it's going to decide what it's going to say, and it's all AI driven. And they're saying that it's going to generate shitloads of money from sponsorships and marketing because of the volume, not necessarily because each podcast is going to be great. But if you're doing 5,000 of them a week, then you can now sell ads across your entire network and make money that way. Do I think it's a good idea? No.
why
Does that
not?
hurt my feelings as a podcaster? No. I just think people have to pick and choose what they want to listen to. Like, I don't care. Like, you can create as many podcasts as you want. I think very quickly people will stop listening to these podcasts, unless, again, you find a niche in which this is actually valuable because there's no other people doing what you're doing. And then it's fine.
This is an even better segue to my next question. Don't you think it would take away the human part of podcast, which is why podcast works in the first place, those conversations, those personal takes on the news, for instance? Do you think this can work? Do you think people can listen to just AI talking to another AI? Or is that not something at the end of the day people are for when it comes to a podcast?
I think it depends. And it depends on several different factors. I probably can't even think of all of them, kind of like shooting from the waist, but I can think of a few. The first one, it depends on the topic. If the topic is really just reporting news, AI will be fantastic. It can do research better than I can. It can summarize it better than I can. And if all it is, and I want to report it, think about news, sports cover. So there's a gazillion shows about baseball, about basketball, about what if you want to cover, underwater fishing, like spear fishing? How many podcasts report on that? Probably very few. I'm There might be thousands. I don't know. If anybody listening to this is a spearfishing podcaster, I'm not here to offend you, but it's probably a very, very small number compared to the number of other sports podcasts. So if you go down to that niche and there's people who want to learn about spearfishing, why not? Right? It's like you don't have the skill, the knowledge. So I think there are cases where that actually works. If it's stuff that has a very high frequency, that's another place. Like if you want to report daily or every 3 hours on the stock market. So let's say you want to create a stock market podcast that actually reports 3 times a day while the markets are open. That means a full-time job. You can do that with AI, no problem. So I think there are cases where it's actually providing value that is very hard to provide with humans. The other reason is I think sometime in not too far future, and maybe even now, we won't be able to tell the difference. Like if nobody's going to tell you that this is AI generated, you won't know. Do I think we're there 100% yet? Depends. Depends on the audience, depends on the topic, depends on the AI platform. But what happens right now doesn't matter. What happens in 2 years and on matters. And at that point, we just won't be able to know. Downside of all of this, going back to how we started this conversation, from my perspective, in addition to I really enjoy doing this and I learn a lot through the podcast, it supports my business. 100%, 100% of the revenue of my business comes, if you trace back a few steps, from the podcast. I couldn't do that if it was AI, because then people will want to hire the AI and they wouldn't want to hire me and my company. And so there's other considerations other than is it easy to do? The fact that it's easy to do doesn't mean it's more valuable or solves the problem that you're trying to solve. So do I think I can do this effectively? Yes. Do I think it's a good idea? Depends on the specific scenario and use case.
Another perfect segue to the next question, Isar. Then you maybe, before we get into that, can you give a quick overview of what Multiplai.ai does and like what you do there, so we have an idea of like the business behind the podcast?
Sure. So the Multiply provides two main things. The main one is AI education. So we teach courses online and we do workshops for companies and we teach courses for companies and so on. So mostly AI education, which means for companies, I come in and I do a survey and I interview a few people and I tailor workshops for them. This could be online workshops, 2 or 3 hours on Zoom. This could be 2 or 3 days in person events where we take and dramatically accelerate the knowledge and the skills of people in the organization. And so this is one thing that I do. The other thing that I do is consulting. There are many of these companies that stay with me for the long run, in which I meet with people from different departments after we do the training, and I help them in the actual implementation, whether on the strategy for leadership team boards and so on. Again, my background is running software companies, and I told you I grew a company from 0 to over 100 million, then sold that business and did a big, large international merger. So I have a lot of very high level business experience that probably most podcasters don't, and definitely most AI educators don't. And so it brings a lot of value to these companies learning how to use AI, either through the education or the consulting aspects, which usually just go hand in hand. So that's what the business does.
So now that it's clear, hopefully for everybody, can you break down for us, because it's rare, right, to have a guest or even any business that's 100% of the business comes from the podcast. So can you break down for us, whatever you're comfortable sharing, how you structure that? So somebody listens to your podcast, right? Then what happens until they book a training from you or they hire you for consulting services? What does the funnel look like?
Great question. I'll start with a very important comment, a disclaimer for people who are like, oh my God, I need to start a podcast today because I need this for my business. It's a long game. Like when I started in April of 2023, 3 people listened to the podcast and not 25,000 people every single week. Like it's a very different kind of ball game 2.5 years later. And that's not even a promise, right? So it's to get there, there were a few steps along the way. It was the right selection of content. It was the right format. It was like all the other stuff that we talked about before. However, now to answer your question, after we said the disclaimer that it's a long game, people see me as an AI expert. I use the show in two main ways to get people to want to work with me. One is I make it very, very clear that I understand the business implications and the business applications of using AI within a business. And it's across a very wide range of businesses, from small businesses to large enterprises. So when people listen to me every single week because I provide value to them, they hear that several times, like, oh my God, he helped this company, he worked with that company, he did this here, he did this there, in a very genuine and non-salesy way. I'm just sharing what I've learned from working with Salesforce, as an example, or working with Amdocs, or working with Gerber, or working with several different NASDAQ traded companies. I just share what I learned. I'm an open book. I hide nothing from what I do. Like, I obviously don't share clients' numbers or information or whatever, but I do share the learning and the use cases and the benefits and the value. So when people see that, they're like, that's very applicable to what we do. I'm like, what's their names? Or if it's good enough for what's their names, it's definitely good enough for me. So this is number one. Number two is when there's bigger events that are happening, like when I launch another public course, I will share that. And I'll say, hey, oh, by the way, and I will always try to make it uh, not this show is sponsored by and these kind of things. I always try to tie it back to the news as an example. So if there's a research in the news that is showing that right now 30% of this is a real statistics, that if 30% of hiring managers in company will not hire people unless they have significant AI knowledge, like, how do you get this AI knowledge? Oh, by the way, we're launching a course starting next month that will teach you how to get that knowledge. And so you do this in a way that ties this back to relevant information in time. It clicks in people's heads. Right? Like, yes, this guy, I've known him for a while. He's really an expert. He's not somebody who fell out of nowhere. He runs several very successful companies. He is now doing a course. I understand from everything he's sharing that this is a make or break for my potential future company or my future employment. Maybe I should check out the course. And so this is one side of the funnel. The other side of the funnel is, and what I said before, I said 100% comes from the podcast if you trace back a few steps. So I get invited to speak on a lot of stages. I do 3 public speaking things in October in 3 different big conferences. Every one of those can lead to business because people see me on stage and they know I'm an expert, because otherwise whoever runs the show will not invite me. They might bring me over. If not, I always share on the stage a big, huge, gigantic QR code at the end. If you want more of this for free, there's a podcast. Go listen to the podcast. So even after the speaking gig, they still not convinced, they can listen for another 2 years. I don't care, until they get convinced, and then they're going to invite me to work with them. So this is step number 2. Step number 3 is obviously referrals. So people who work with me and then send somebody else to work with me, but the first person found me on the podcast. The person who runs the event found me on the podcast, and so on and so forth. So it's not that all of it comes directly from the podcast, but if you start the steps back, really big known international companies invite me to teach them because somehow it's connected back to the podcast.
All right, and here we go again for another long road of follow-up questions. So, I love all this. And I was going to ask you about attribution, and you've nailed it here. So, you know that you get invited to conferences because you have the authority, because you have the podcast. You go to conferences, people hear you speak on stage, and they're like, hey, wait a second, who's this guy, Isar, who just gave me a 40 minutes masterclass? What does he do? How can I get help from him? You're publishing the right content, so people come from that directly as well. The interesting thing that you mentioned here, Isar, is the podcast allows you to get into conferences, like public speaking gigs, and you're also leveraging the conferences to get more people to listen to your podcast. If they are not ready to hire you directly, you share this big QR code at the end of the conference. So you have a podcast that gets you in conference. You build an audience on your podcast thanks to the conferences. For people who have neither right now, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg story, right? So where would you recommend people start? I love that you mentioned it's a long-term game, by the way. But how do I get into conferences to boost the audience of my podcast if I don't have a podcast in the first place to get invited to conferences? How would you recommend people to go about that?
One, I will say, I don't think there's magic and shortcuts. You've been doing this as well. You may have secrets up your sleeve. I don't, but I don't think there are shortcuts. There are some shortcuts. Number one is not really a shortcut. It's just doing what we said before. You got to understand your audience. You got to understand what value you can provide, and you just got to start. And then, yes, it will take you 6 months to get your first, speaking gig. If I wanted to, I can do 2 a month every month right now. I don't, because it's too much travel and I have 3 kids and I don't want to do it. But as far as opportunities, they are there. So I pick and choose the speaking gigs that I actually want to go after. And the audience has to be relevant, and the future potential business has to be big enough, and so on and so forth. The second thing that you can do, and that is a little bit of a hack, is what we're doing right now. You can go on other people's podcasts, and then two things happen. A, people who listen to the other podcast, which are by definition podcast people who are listening to podcasts, which is not every person. They're like, oh, this guy sounds interesting. He speaks my language. He talks about stuff I want to hear about. And all I have to do is, on the phone I'm on right now, click back on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever it is that you're listening to podcasts for, put in the name, and you find the other podcast. If the other podcasters is nice, they're going to put a link in the show notes to send people to that location. Hint, hint. No, I'm just kidding. Do whatever you want. But you get an exposure to an audience that, if you pick the right podcast to be on, will be the right audience, right? Another thing is, somebody who has a conference may listen to the other podcast and not to your podcast. And they want to say, oh my God, I got to invite this guy or girl to speak on my podcast, to speak on my event, because this was absolutely fantastic. And so you just get more exposure to audiences that otherwise you don't get exposure to. And another similar approach is just doing collabs with people. So if you find somebody who has a huge audience on YouTube and you invite them as a guest and you do the show as a YouTube live, then the other person is going to share it on their YouTube channel, and he gets 15,000, 50,000, 100, doesn't matter, X number of views more than you. You just got these views and it's on your show. And so there's different ways to accelerate the process, but there's no magic. Like, it's still going to take, like, nothing's going to happen in the first 15, 20 episodes. Nothing. And then things starts happening. The other thing that I will say, something that I do, and I've done this in my previous company and I'm doing this now and it's very successful, is I started an online live community event. So every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, shameless plug, we do what we call the AI Friday Hangouts. And the AI Friday Hangouts started as a way for me to let people who take my courses have more time to ask me questions. But then people stuck around. They never left. And then we changed it into a community thing instead of just an open kind of like office hours thing. And it started, I don't know, just over a year ago with me and a bunch of crickets, all alone in the dark, sitting and waiting for somebody to join, to now there's 25, 30 people every single week. There's people from China, from UAE, from several different places in Europe, from South Africa, every place in the US and Canada, UK, of course, Ireland, all the way to Hawaii. So literally people from most time zones around the world almost every single week. And it's freaking awesome. And so why is that important? Because it builds a community of people who will say, hey, you need to check out this guy if you need anything, anytime somebody asks them about AI. And I get to learn and experience and get ideas from a much bigger group of people, because a podcasting is a very lonely kind of job, as you know. Like, you send the content out there and that's it. Like, you don't know what's happening. Like, there's very little actual feedback on what's happening. Like, you could see how many people listen. You can see where they are in the world. You can see what device they're on. That's about it. Like, you don't know if they liked it, they didn't like it, they find value, they didn't find value, you should change this, you should add that. Like, that doesn't happen. And then suddenly having a live community of people who are in there, they teach you, they give you feedback, you learn new things from them, you see what they've learned from you. Like, there's now a whole other sphere of value that gets created around you that leads to even more business and more value to other people as well. Now, one of the things that people do that I don't, and I could, but I already have 2 episodes a week, is you can share that content as an episode, right? Because it's another piece of really valuable content. So there's people who do that. They have these meetings with an audience and then they share that as an episode. Something I considered multiple times and I decided for now not to do it, but just telling you that's another option.
Why did you decide against it?
Just because I think 2 episodes a week is enough. I think going more frequently than that is a little too much. The other reason is I want to keep the community free of thinking about, oh, X number of tens of thousands of people are going to see me asking this question. I don't want to look dumb, kind of thing. So that's another reason why not to do it. We are using it for content on social media. So like short snippets of Q&A or me talking about something or somebody else saying something that is really, really cool. Then we are leveraging short segments of it, but not the entire thing.
It was an absolute masterclass, Isar. One thing I'm just going to add here that I want to double down on is podcast is great. Obviously, I'm biased here. It's greater when you have something else to go along with it, right? And you name it, conferences, speaking engagements, community, something that you can link with thanks to the podcast is absolute cool because that's going to be, podcast is essentially going to be top, can be middle of funnel, right? You have something else to bring people to the finish line, conferences, lead magnet potentially, right? With an email nurture sequence. I love the community. We have a few clients that we set up on a monthly or quarterly webinar as well that we advertise on the podcast to make that link and to capture those email addresses and leads. This is where the magic of podcast really happens. Bearing in mind that it takes time, but it compounds, which is exactly what's happening to you, and which is fantastic. So there is a question I ask all my guests, and it's going to be particularly interesting with you, I feel. Jeff Bezos, when he was building Amazon, right, he didn't try to guess what was going to happen in 10 years or what the change in 10 years, what's going to be the next innovation, right? Rather, he was asking himself, what is true today that will still be true in 10 years? People are still going to want fast shipping. They are still going to want large amount of choices, ideally with cheap ones, and are still going to want great customer service. So if we double down on this right now, we're set up for the next 10 years. Bring that back to podcast. What is true today, in your opinion, that will still be true in 10 years that people should double down on, especially in B2B podcasting?
Wow. With what's happening with AI right now, I'm not making any bets for more than 18 months. But specifically on the topic of podcasting, I will say two things. Number one is and I'll tie it back to AI. Because AI will be available to everybody in 5 years, 10 years, everybody will figure it out, right? Right now, there's a huge opportunity, and those who move fast will gain huge benefits. But in 10 years, it will be like, oh, I use the internet. Like, okay, everybody's using the internet. That's not a big deal. And so, because everybody will be using AI, and because AI will do most of what we're doing today, the biggest differentiator is going to be human relationships. Who can develop trust, relationships, understandings, connections with other people better than others? And that will be true within your company. You'll have a great culture and employees who want to work with you, for you, etc. It will be true for your ecosystem, supplier, distributors, consultants, etc. And it will be true for your clients and prospects. Podcast, B2B podcast specifically, is an awesome way to nurture relationships. Again, the amount of people, you know that, right? Because you have a podcast, but I don't know how much you get to speak on stages and so on. Every conference that I speak on that is an AI conference, and actually most of the conferences I go to are not AI conferences. The ones I go that are AI conferences, I usually don't speak. I go there to listen and meet and whatever. But when people meet me and say, "Oh, I already know you," like people feel they know me. I've never met the guy. People recognize my voice. Like I'll be in a circle of people in a networking event and somebody will tap on my shoulder and say, "You're Isar, right?" I'm like, yes, and I'm really bad with names. I never remember names, which is horrible. I'm like, I really apologize. Don't remember saying, no, we've never met. I've been listening to you twice a week for like a year and a half. You're like awesome and so on. So people get to know you. People get to know you. So despite the fact you never met them, they have a relationship with you. They have a level of trust, a level of understanding, a level of connection that, by the way, is impossible to get almost in any other way. And that's, again, I'm going to touch on one little other trick that is important. I know it's not related to what you asked, but it's somewhat related. Think about time. Let's say you are incredible on social media and you get 10,000 likes and people to view your 30-second video. That's 10,000 times 30 seconds. I get 25, 30,000 listens for a 45 minutes, hour-long sessions. And yes, not everybody listens to every show. And yes, some shows flunk and people listen to just 30 minutes out of the hour. Doesn't matter. I don't know what the math is on how many years is 25,000 hours, but it's X number of years of accumulated relationship building every month. You have to be one of the best, most successful people on social media ever, like get millions of views on your content to get the same amount of time that you get from one episode, right? Because these are 30-second snippets versus 45 minutes. And so it's a very, very big difference. So connecting this back to your question is it's about building relationships, right? If you can build relationship, build trust, generate value, have an emotional connection with people, it will just help you be more successful in life in general, not just in business. And I think that's not going to change. If anything, in an AI world, it will become more inviolable.
Oh, I did. I remember the first time I got recognized at the conference. It was in another industry, in corporate treasury, with and thanks to my first podcast. It's a very, very interesting and weird feeling. Like Guillaume and Danilo, forever in our heads. But like you get recognized from a total stranger and like, oh yeah, you're the host of Corporate Treasury 101. Yeah. And like the power this thing has. And back to the previous point of if you have something on top of podcast, this is where the magic happens. Isar, this was an absolute podcasting masterclass for B2B businesses. Thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, where should they go?
So the easiest way is LinkedIn. I have a name that is very hard to pronounce and I have to explain it every single time. But I'm the only Isar Meitis on LinkedIn, which is absolutely awesome. So it's ISAR MEITIS. That's the easiest way to find me. I'm there every single day, and you can chat with me. And it's actually me, not AI. So if you send me a message, I will actually respond to you. Again, if that wasn't clear, I'm a huge believer in relationships, and so it will be me responding to you. If you want to learn about my courses and so on, then the place to go is Multiply, and it's spelled with an AI instead of Y in the end. So it's multiplai.ai. So I thought it's a really, really cool domain name, and I got it. And now I have to spell it and explain it every single time. And so maybe it's not that great, but I still think it's cool. So it's Multiply spelled with AI instead of a Y, .ai in the end. And over there, you'll find my courses and you can book time with me and so on. And obviously, the Leveraging AI podcast. So if you're listening to this, you're listening on some kind of podcasting platform, just hit on the search button, type Leveraging AI, and you'll be able to find the podcast over there as well. And if you are there on the podcast you're on right now, give them a 5-star review, write some nice words. This is a lot of work that happens for this to actually work. So if you haven't done it so far, there's a bunch of people that are working hard to get this podcast to you. So give them a thumbs up, give them a review, and make them happy.
So for the past here, Isar, we'll put all the links in the description. Just one last question out of pure curiosity. Wasn't multiple.ai available? So you could just, make the link
I didn't even
MUL.
think about it when I got the domain name.
Okay.
And so this is what ended up being, right? I wanted the actual
That
first
works.
idea wasn't multiply, it was amplify, spelled with
Okay.
AI at the end, and that was already taken.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, what other words kind of mean the same? And I can play on, and so Multiply came to my head, and that
It's
was
really good.
available. So I was very happy, and I got it, and I launched the thing. But yeah, might have been a better idea.
It does work really well. Isar, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus.
Thank you. This was fantastic. I appreciate you. Great questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.